Welcome to Code Product Love Talk, where this is our, I guess, our mantra, where make change and we help businesses get ready for the future, making digital things together. And Day Zero that I'm going to be talking about today is like a key aspect of that. Really, it's like the starting point of what we do with our partners. So I'm going to share a few things about how we do that and why we do that. So how Day Zeros work with our initiatives. So I thought I'd just cover off some house rules, basics. I reckon you're all probably used to this now if you go into like other meetups and things like that. But essentially, if you can submit your questions through the team chat window, post it, and Yain will be looking at it, and we'll probably get to them at the end, and kind of do like a bit of a Q&A session at the end. It's going to be the video is going to be this talk's going to be recorded on YouTube, so you can come back to our site and see it. And if you can mute your mic, that'd be great whilst I'm talking, so I don't go off my flow. That's great. But if you want to stay on video, you absolutely can. It's entirely up to you. We don't mind. Thank you. That's the rules done. So hello everybody. I thought I'd just give you a brief intro to kind of me as a designer, I suppose. Like, who am I talking to you guys? I've been at Code for nearly 14 years now, actually. 14 and a half maybe, but I've had like lots of jobs within digital design, web design, start right back to like 2001. So I've got quite a bit of experience in the industry, and my experience and my role and my job in various places has evolved with the industry. So up to the point where now I'm sort of head of design, looking after the product design discipline, more specifically within Code. So I look after the guys, the designers in the product teams, and I also look after like the discipline and making sure that we're doing the best we can and evolving as the industry evolves. But today I'm going to talk about Day Zero workshops, and I thought I'd just kind of cover off a little bit about it really. I guess this is, I suppose, like a bit of a caveat. Like sometimes like people can kind of feel like everything's a workshop. Sometimes, like modern design nowadays, actually product design has become very workshop orientated for good reasons. Like so it can be collaborative, and it's like design doesn't happen in designers' heads anymore. Really, it's like collaborative process with stakeholders, product owners, customers, engineering teams. Like there's so much more that happens outside of like a design tool, a Figma tool or whatever, Sketch. So we often have to do workshops, and this is kind of like basically a nod to the fact that we're not proposing Day Zeros for the sake of it. Like they're really useful. So if you've kind of experienced workshop fatigue, this is a really good one that you should definitely keep. Because you might experience everyone asking for workshops and you're going to get fed up of it. But Day Zero workshops are great. So it might feel like this at times, but stick with it. Because ultimately, like, I suppose anyone that hasn't done a workshop, because I suppose like some people don't, like some people just have never really been in workshops or run it, or you kind of like maybe budgets are small, times is restricted, and you just have to feel like you need to crack on. But ultimately, workshop is about a group of people brought together into a room, either physically or virtually, with a single purpose, performing structured activities. And it's really about cutting through efficiency and having those people together. So that's like a bit of an intro to, I suppose, workshops in general. But what we're talking about is ultimately a workshop. But a Day Zero workshop, it's all about aligning stakeholders, shared purpose and understanding of where the business is now. And it's with like talk about challenges that they face, maybe where the business needs to go in the future, and we can delve really into like generally like these 4 areas. Like we'll cover like topics wise. So we uncover the things about the business. We can delve into what the users, what they might know about the users. We kind of uncover things about the brand and the market, and then specifically about the product. And it's really like an immersive, full-on intensive day really workshop. Collaboratively with people in Code, like the product team in Code and the multiple disciplines of Code, and then also different teams within the client space. And as you can see from the picture, it used to be very heavily physical, and that's actually a picture of one of our partners. Like so, the people, the client side will be talking and interacting. It's not just a sit down, listen to kind of like they sit around the table while we do stuff around the edges. It's definitely like a a shared effort of like sharing knowledge and all that kind of thing, which I'm going to talk about in next, really. So there's two reasons, I suppose, that we do day zeros. And I suppose let's cover off why we call it day zero. It's because like literally nothing exists. It's like completely new and fresh, and it's like the ultimate foundation. It's like you're breaking ground, you're digging the foundations, essentially, if you think of it in a physical building sense. It's like, you know, we've done the sales process and we've got the client, we've won it, let's say, and we know we're going to need to build a thing, but nothing exists. There's no plans. There's just a location. So we're starting to like dig the ground and test the foundations. That's essentially what we're doing, really. I might try and use that metaphor a bit further, see how far I can stretch it. Anyway, so day zeros for us really is about two things. So we might be engaging with like a big kind of transformational kind of initiative with a big partner, and it's right at the start, and we might want to kind of like really delve into the organization's kind of leadership team about what their kind of future ambitions are and just how far they maybe want to stretch and think about where they're heading in the future. So we focus like a whole day of activity around future visionary thinking, really to stretch our shared ambition. So it's like we as Code might have ideas and really want to push them, and they might have, the client and the partner might have ideas, and different teams might have ideas, and it's really an opportunity for us to kind of get everything out on the table from a strategic point of view, as an organization, and get everything on the table and really stretch and align where we think we want to go. So that's more about, I suppose, relationship forming, an organizational kind of like change, I suppose, more transformational. And then on the flip side, we also do them a bit, maybe sort of similar kind of activities, but with a more focused aim around product kickoffs. So like, if we know we're kind of making a specific thing, like a website, like let's say it's an e-commerce thing or a marketing kind of platform or something, we can do a day zero around more of a strategic product focus to inform what we do now and next. So we're not really about visionary stretching, like where does the business need to go in 5 years. It's like we're getting together to figure out how we make a thing that they've engaged with us. So it's like two ends of the scale, really, I suppose, and they're really good for doing both things. But ultimately, these are like the benefits of doing that workshop. For us, I think what we found, because we are inside of Code, like our product teams, we're naturally kind of working in a way that's kind of open and collaborative. We're showing our work in progress, like we're just having conversations all the time, and we do different methods. We kind of user focused and all that kind of thing, all that kind of things that you'd expect from modern product design business. We want to role model that kind of mentality and way of working right at the start with those key stakeholders. So when we do those day zeros, we're kind of like rolling out those methods and those ways of working, and they're experiencing what it's going to be like, a little bit of what it's going to be like to work with us going forward. So it's a really good way of role modeling how we want to work together and setting the tone, I suppose, of interaction. We find that we're bringing together internal teams from the client space for the first time. So, we might be wanting information or getting them to talk about, let's say the marketing team might do a bit of a talk about what they know, the sales team might do a bit, the IT team might do a bit, your senior, like your CEO might even come and do a bit of a visionary presentation. And often it's like the first time in 6 months that those people have got together and talked about one thing specifically. So it's quite good for them to kind of like come together and get their kind of like alignment internally as well. It also obviously kicks off the relationship with us and our client partners. It's just having that face-to-face or virtual face-to-face kind of interaction, conversational kind of working together kind of on methods and activities, just really sets a good kind of like grounding for like a good working relationship. It's great for like aligning us on our next research goals. So like often we'll discuss like what do we know about our users, or what do we know about the product and the market, and generally what we're looking for is the gaps in what they don't have or knowledge they don't have. Often everyone's done some sort of research. They might have done, let's say, might have some personas from 5 years ago, or they might have done some market research a year ago or something. And it's for us as a group to then collectively like assess how recent is it, how confident are we in that, what do we need to do next for our next initiative. So it's setting up our next design program or research program. And it's great for aligning ourselves on shared ambition. Again, like that can be a source of conflict because we all can take different and interpret different kind of things from a brief and our conversation. Like code are naturally ambitious and want to push our products with our clients, want to kind of really kind of go for it, versus like the client might have different expectations or needs. So it's like really making sure that you align on the brief really and our goals and what we're trying to achieve. It's great for cutting through the politics of like internal politics and making decisions. Similarly to like a design sprint is great for like cutting through the noise of like back and forth decision making around design. A workshop like this with everyone in the room, we can design kind of like activities to just cut through decision making and make decisions quickly with the right people in the room. Yeah, and then the last one is like often another one for the client side teams. Like it can often feel a bit like therapy sometimes when we do certain activities where they're getting out all that, we call it stinky fish, but it's like things that kind of like create a bit of a bad smell, and kind of like the longer you leave them, the worse they get. So it's like it's just a good opportunity for them to kind of put those kind of like things on the table. Like for example, obvious one is like we don't have a culture of research, or our leadership, we believe our leadership team doesn't think customer first, or our IT systems are like 20 years old and they're just not capable of what we want them to do. Like just getting all that out on the table is great. So then that helps us understand what we have to work with, because ultimately we're going to potentially might be making a website, but also we might need to do some coaching and like more transformational change around how that's then handed over and delivered into the customer space, into the client space, so that product's really successful. So some of the benefits of why it's really good actually. So a little bit about the structure. Again, it's a workshop, so keep thinking in your mind it's still just a workshop. And some, obviously when we always advocate, like you don't always need a workshop, but in this instance you do. But I guess you're working at the end and thinking about what's the reason you're doing this workshop, what do you need out the end of it. If it's a transformational strategic kind of like workshop, what do you want out at the end of it? So it's probably something like an agreed ambition of where you want to be in 5 years, or like a shared or an agreed idea that you're going to then do a strategy piece or a product canvas out at the end of it, like what you're trying to get out of it, and then you work backwards. So then what artifacts do you need to create out of it, what objectives are you trying to achieve, what activities will you do, and then what inputs do you need beforehand. So this is like our standard kind of, I suppose, workshop designing and planning kind of thought process, like jump to the end and then work backwards. And that's like, I suppose you can apply that to any type of workshop, but this is still relevant for day zeros. We often get everybody actually, not just the client partner, to do a bit of workshop prep. So fuel for conversation, I suppose, or even just getting everyone into the mindset of the kind of product or the market space, or what's going on. And we call this the point method, essentially because each one spells out a point. But it's basically each kind of like sheet is like theme. So like a problem, what really bugs you about what's going on right now. You can apply that to maybe the product specifically, or it could be the business or organization or how you work. It's like open, it's as big or as focused as you want it to be really, but it's really conversational cards. So we ask them to think about problems, we ask them to think about what opportunities do they think that exists currently, we ask them to think about insights, like what else have they seen in their industry or like online or whatever's going around that they think's really an interesting piece of information. What do they think, what do they personally feel is missing, or what do they need? And like any kind of emerging like themes or trends that they see happening, and we get them to fill that in, like draw a picture, write a bit about it, and then they present those at the start of a workshop. And it's really great fuel actually for everyone to kind of talk and get the conversations going. And that's again a method, or just a general workshop method actually, that you can take away and use for any setting, really. Any doesn't have to be a day zero. It could be any kind of product initiative or any scenario, really. It's really useful. And then generally the workshop looks, this is obviously a Miro board, and our workshops are pretty much virtual now, but we will obviously be doing a mix of both going forward, but this is what our digital version looks like, and we're generally stepping through those sort of like 4 areas that I'm kind of covered. So we want to learn about the business, we want to learn about the market and the brand, and we want to learn about the products and what they know about the users, and we go through like set activities really. So we always start with lightning talks. So we'll have briefed some people beforehand, and we'll kind of do some lightning talks about the business, where they're trying to go. Like your IT director might then talk us through some like architectural diagrams around systems and tools and what they can and can't do, limitations, that kind of thing. They might, if they've done some marketing research recently to initiate even this kind of conversation, they can share that with us. Then we kind of like take over a little bit as code people. We'll take over a bit from like and put them into shift themselves from, because the lightning talks are very much inward focused, like they're telling us about them. And then we help them kind of step into the customer's shoes a little bit. So we do a few activities around that. One being empathy map, where we can kind of like put them in the mindset of like what your customers thinking and feeling and saying and doing. And that's really 2 purposes, I suppose. Like one is like just to get them used to thinking, putting their head in the mindset of their customers, and also like just expose maybe what they do and don't know about their customers. We expect an internal organization and different departments to know quite a bit about their customers, but obviously not everything. So that's like one aspect of it. And then we also want to find out who do they think are their like customer groups, like who do they think that they're marketing to right now, who are the demographics, I suppose is probably a good way to think about it. And then that lets us get to think about, so we've got 3 demographics, who's our priority, and that might then give us some decisions about what we do next and who we speak to. So like unpacking what they know about the customers is really great. And then we might do some brand exercises. So we often do like word brand positioning, I suppose is probably a good way of calling it. Like you might be able to see a column there where we have like brands on one side of it of a lever. So we'll have like a value, like let's say it's traditional versus modern, and we'll have a brand that represents both, and it will do it as a group exercise of like, so where you are now, do you think you're more modern or more traditional? And we'll go through various different like brand values, and they can align to what they think their brand values are. I mean, it's like a bit of a benchmarking exercise around how they think they are performing against what their brand values are. And then we can do it again, like, so where do you want to be in 3 years time? And then we can understand their ambitions around where they might want to be pushing the brand or repositioning even based on what they need to achieve. So that's a really good starting exercise around how they feel about their brand, where they are. And then we then do like what we call sticky steps, which is like the brown sheet with like post-it notes sort of in a linear fashion. It's essentially like the starting point of an experience map. So we step into like the service, essentially like understanding the service, and we generally get them to kind of step us through like, so what's your service and how does a customer get through it, and we'll kind of like plot that, so we get a deeper understanding of what the product is or the service that they're offering. And then we end on like a bit of a visionary exercise around, and we call it like newspaper headlines. We get them to kind of write a headline really quickly, like where are you going to be at the end of this year, where do you want to be at the end of 2 years, and then where do you want to be in the end of 5 years. And it really helps them step through, I suppose, mentally around where do they want to be in 5 years, but then what are those milestones to get there. So that's a really great idea, like great exercise to get them to kind of think through like key milestones to get to the end, and that really helps us actually inform our program of work. It's like, and understand where their heads at as well, because you'll have different stakeholders of like wildly different like ambition. Like some really like 5 years is like, I want to have some sort of augmented reality kind of like smell-based interface, versus somebody might just want to win an award. So it's like, it's really great to understand where they're at in that space. So that's kind of like what a general workshop methods look like. We can swap in and out different methods depending on what we might know about people and the product and stuff, but broadly speaking, we go through that kind of process. Workshop methods. Yeah, and then we kind of like, this is a bit of an overview. I've spoken in detail a bit more about it. So it's lightning talks. Essentially, we're capturing when we hear stuff, we're turning those things into how might we use. This is very similar to what an understand day of a design sprint might feel like if you've ever experienced that. But we do lightning talks, and we're capturing those how might we use, and then we theme them. It's an example of we've themed them under kind of like topics around what we think is important. This is an example of an empathy map. So we'll kind of like set who the person is, or the scenario, or the kind of demographic, and then we go through like still quite lo-fi, like what would be the thinking, what would they be doing and feeling and saying, really putting yourself into their shoes. And this is the brand exercise again. So like here, like the top one is like, so is your brand a friend like BuzzFeed, or is it authority like the Times, or is it a challenger like Airbnb, or is it more traditional like Hilton? And you can get them to kind of like think about where do they think they are now, and where do they want to be, and you can kind of, that helps you then focus even your research questions. So like if they want to be a challenger but they're seen as traditional, then there's some research to be done there around why that is. So that's really great, just another lo-fi conversation starter from those people. And then this is like the sticky steps sort of method about how we map out the journeys. So if you're not familiar with an experience map, it's generally like we think about the phases. So like from a service point of view, so how it's from the lens of a customer. So how does a customer engage and experience your product or service? And you go through those key phases of like something happens, like a trigger, and then they're acquired. There's an acquisition stage, and then there's a conversion stage where they're looking at your website or making decisions, and then they engage and buy, and then there's a kind of using your service and products, and then there's a retention. So there's like a whole, and it's basically mapping out the lifestyle, not lifestyle, the end-to-end lifespan, I should say, of your customer. So we get a really good broad view of like the whole basically. So then we can then hone in on, so where's the important parts. So that's a really great lo-fi starting point to unpack and understand the service. And then this is the kind of exercise we do to imagine the future. So if they was to write a breaking news headline for their organization, if it was like going into an industry publication, like what would they be saying? What would they want to be said about what they've done in year 1, year 5, year 10? You can change the year time frames. Like 10 years is like nowadays is like, it's pretty ridiculous actually. It's probably more like what's going to happen in 3 months, what's going to happen in a year, and what's going to happen in 2. It's like 2 years is probably as future thinking as you could probably be. But it's always good to kind of really kind of stretch them out. It's a good thing to do. But again, it's really lo-fi, really accessible, post-it note driven. Everyone can take part. I think that's the key. All the different types of people that are in that room can actively take part in these activities. And we've built up like a bank of different workshop methods over the years, I suppose, like that align to different areas of activity. So we've got a whole bunch of workshops around discovery in that sense. Some workshops to help us define things, and some things to kind of push us and develop ideas, and then things around what we would do to kind of deliver. So this is just, I recommend, like as an organization, that you do that yourselves, like start collecting go-to workshop methods that you think are really good and that have worked for you, so that you're not, when you're asked to do something like this in the future, you can grab those things and then you know what you're doing. It's a really good resource to kind of collect for yourselves. But things to watch out for, because obviously a Day Zero workshop is a tricky exercise, because you're dealing with like important people, if you like, that have probably got really strong views, and they've probably been thinking about this thing that they're talking to you for probably maybe a good year solidly, like, and they've to the point where they've then commissioned, they've highlighted there's a thing that needs to be done, then they've gone through a tender process maybe, and the pitching process, and to the point where you're commissioned and working with them, like it's like, you know, they kind of just want to get on with it. But they've probably got really strong views and opinions, so it's like making sure you can get those out, but it doesn't derail everybody else that might be then taking part. because you might be getting different departments involved that's never heard of any of this stuff that maybe the CEO or leadership team are talking about. So it's things to watch out for, things like hippos, the really important people, like being too strong of a voice. These are like typical workshop watch out fors as well. So like making sure that you don't get sidetracked on that day zero, and kind of cutting through any internal politics or out of scope conversations. You can do things like parking lot, which is really great. Obviously, multiple conversations is difficult if that's happening because people naturally want to do that. You might have people just talking like in little pockets, but as a facilitator, you have to try and like shut that down a little bit so that everyone gets the benefit of all the conversations and not siloed conversations here and there. Because ultimately, the end of the day of the workshop is to get everybody hearing and kind of agreeing on what everything's said, not little conversations. Phone and email distractions in general, like you need to make sure that everyone's fully committed into it because it's a really important kind of like step. Like if someone's checking an email and they've missed out on a vital piece of like information or agreeing on something, and then like 6 months down the line they go, well, I don't remember agreeing to that, but they were there and present. It's really important that they are present and kind of focused. People dominating conversations linked to hippos, really. So our workshop activities kind of reduce that. So it's about democratizing the experience, but making sure everyone's voice is heard, I think is really important. And then anybody that's quiet, make sure that they're contributing, because it's understanding like quiet versus people just listening and analyzing, because I think that's a skill. So some people just need to be able to listen and mull it over and can't make snap decisions straight away. So I think that's the thing that you need to watch out in these circumstances when we're talking about big impactful topics and things that some people might just need to be able to take it away a little bit and think about it. So that's also fine, but just ask, like it's okay for you to not necessarily have an answer right now, but like we'll come back to you and just make a note of that. And then key outcomes for the day, really. Ultimately is like a product canvas, we call it, or a business canvas. There's canvases for everything nowadays, but essentially this is I suppose like a strategic living document that evolves throughout the project. And this is like the tool that we use to kind of capture things right at the start. What do we know now? What do we need to fill in? Where we're trying to get to? We come back to this and use this document in like our regular then account meetings or catch ups, so that we're kind of always honing people back into this original shared understanding and purpose, so we don't lose track or go off on a tangent. This is how we kind of, I suppose it's a bit of like, it's a modern day briefing document, I suppose, with everything in it, and it's kept as like as a one pager so that it's really digestible as well. So like if you start making it bigger, putting more information in, you've too much there. So yeah, we use Product Canvas a lot actually with all our different engagements as a way of capturing that strategic thought and purpose. And actually, I think that's it for that. So yeah, I've gone through it all half an hour. So hopefully you got some good things out of it. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. I might stop sharing so I can see people.
I don't think there's been any questions in the chat, but if anyone's got any, yeah, feel free to drop any in the chat, or you can obviously ask them through the mic as well. Yeah, it will be on YouTube as well to catch up as well, for anyone who wants to watch it again. I've got a question, Carl, while someone's just typing. How do you know like the right time to sort of launch a day zero? Is there like a premium time to do it, or is it a case of where you're at with the client in terms of the relationship and stuff?
Yeah, so obviously if it's that kind of first one, like the sort of transformational strategic thing where you're starting off a relationship, it's pretty much like once they've agreed to work with you as a partner, that's like a good time when you're formulating your internal team around them. Like, so we want to do something with you, we're gathering some people, here's your team at Code, let's meet together and kickstart that off. That's always it's like the start of it is a good time to do that.
Yeah.
And then like obviously you don't want to be doing day zeros and repeating the same thing, so you wouldn't necessarily do another one like that for a while unless the internal team changed maybe. If there's a significant amount of change at the client side or our side, we might want to redo that and reset that a little bit. It's always good to check into that maybe every 6 months to a year. And then from a product more focused point of view, it's like at the start of that initiative, basically.
Yeah. Someone has said, your resources are great. Would you be willing to share any of them? Yes. I think we can sort of do like a bit of a blanket email call with some of the links to, some of the things we've got. That's fine.
Yeah, like those methods, like they're not necessarily they're not code methods. They're just kind of industry standard workshop methods that we know works well for us. So yeah, we can definitely like send the resource. If you want general kind of like workshop advice, get the book Game Storming. We can post that link out for you, and then that basically tells you how to do any kind of workshop method ever in the world. Like if ever you hear like some sort of workshop guru talking about workshops, it's because they've read that book, basically. So yeah, I definitely do that.
There's a few more typing.
Jim's got his hand up.
I think.
A few questions through. So if a client has a product idea / high level features or already have a good sense of what broad strokes things are to be built, sounds like you're not going into too much data or solutions or breaking down the problem the product / project will tackle. Is that left for the next up, or did I miss where you dive into the scope solution? Yeah, so I suppose we wouldn't necessarily do a day zero with a specific solution in mind. I think that's probably just how code works. We've maybe like put that on the table of like, so why do you need that solution? We'd unpack that in the lightning talks around. So what's the business trying to do? You've got an idea, so let's talk about that, and then take that back. We talk then backwards around. So what problems that trying to solve? What's your objectives and KPIs? And then we can kind of like make a decision around what's next then. So strategic. So this is more the kind of the second version of the day zero, where it's more product tactical focused. We can then we talk about what do we know about customers. We can map through the products in sticky steps. So like you've got an idea, let's step through it, and then we can then kind of explore it in more detail, like what's missing. So then we can kind of like make a group selective decision around, so are we validating and making this, or do we need to do some more product discovery to make sure that the idea that you've come to the table with is sound. And that's like, we've been open about saying those things.
I think my mic's working now.
Yes, hi Jim.
Hey, thanks Colin, that's really interesting talk. Just a question from me is around like, so if you think about the people that you need to get involved, both from a client side and from a agency side, it doesn't sound like a cheap thing to do a day zero workshop. So I'm just wondering, obviously without kind of giving too much away, is there like a threshold? There must be some kind of threshold whereby it's kind of worth doing it, and below that it maybe isn't worth doing it. So I'm just interested in what your thoughts might be around that. Yeah,
obviously you're not going to, let's say that the client's got 50 grand budget to make a product. You're not going to then spend 10k doing a day zero. Perhaps 100%. Yeah, cool. It's all about percentages, obviously. Generally speaking, like the strategic day zero, where it's like business visionary, like they're going to be spending significant amount of money with us over a long period. I think it's the longevity of that relationship is the key to that kind of day zero. If we think it's like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year piece of engagement, and it's got lots of scope, we might choose to invest in that day zero, or we'll kind of just like explain the importance of it. Generally speaking, from a code perspective, there's maybe like 5 people in it. From the different kind of discipline areas, but then if it's like more of a product focused kind of initiative where we might be delivering a product in 6 months, we still see value because it cuts through the kind of wasted time of not having it, basically. So there's an efficiency there to be had, rather than going through like around the houses. Like you might do it differently by just doing stakeholder interviews and just like talking to each one of them individually, and then you might then gather all the information, but then you've got to still then got to present that back, assimilate your findings, and then have some sort of view, and then it goes around the houses internally. So it's really just about efficiency on the second kind of more focused product kind of day zero. But again, like it's all about common sense in terms of like money ratios, basically.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Do we have a question?
Yeah. One more question.
Do you have any recommendations for customers that want to workshop in silos who believe they can't meet or have no crossovers to sell them on the concepts of the collaborative workshop? So do you mean like only the marketing team will turn up to the workshop or something like that? Is that what you mean? Okay, yeah. So we wouldn't do it. Basically, it would be a waste of effort and time. Like the whole point of it is to have shared learning and those people come together. And it's like we're the people that bring those people together. Like the point is you're doing it together and talking together, and getting your kind of like barriers and frustrations out to each other, and it sets up that ways of working. So we would just insist on that.
Okay, I think that's all the questions covered. If anyone does have any more questions, feel free to get in touch with us. Cole's always around to sort of share insight and knowledge, and obviously you can, again, it's on YouTube, and you can leave comments on there as well, and we'll check into that as well. So thanks everyone for coming along. We'll be back next month with another one. It'll be on a sort of web analytics and how we sort of use principles with our partners. So make sure you come to that one as well. And then hopefully we'll see you all again soon. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys. Good questions.
Thank you.